So this afternoon, we're joined by Dr. Monica Danneman, who's running for House District 26 up in York County. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we want to start off by making sure our members get to know a little bit about you and your background. So if you would share a little bit with me about your personal and professional backgrounds and how those shape your views on education.
I'm from South Carolina. I grew up right here in York County where I'm running for office. And I went to public schools, my whole life. I K to 12 public schools. Undergrad was a public school, so I'm a product of public education here in South Carolina. And for me, overall, it was a positive experience, and I'm glad to be back in my hometown after having lived elsewhere for a while. So so that's my personal experience with public education. I work in healthcare. I'm a physical therapist. I do take, PT students a lot, but in terms of like public education, K to 12 teachers, I don't really have any experience in that. But I'm very supportive of public education given my background and my experience in that as a student. And, I want to do everything that I can to support teachers. I have friends who are teachers, and I've throughout this process of running for office and, learning a lot about the issues that affect our state. Public education is a big one. And where I live in Fort Mill, we have a great school district. We always vote to raise our own taxes to continue to support our schools. But I know it's not the same across the board, across the state, and that other communities aren't having the same experience that kids in my district are.
Well, that is actually a really nice segue into a topic I was hoping to address with you, which is about equity of education across the state. Because as you correctly pointed out, different localities have different tax bases and different abilities to pay for schooling. But the General Assembly has a constitutional obligation to ensure an adequate education for all kids, regardless of zip code. But we know we fall short. The state Supreme Court has said as much. So as a member of the General Assembly, what would you push for to drive South Carolina closer to the goal of an equitable education for all students?
Just fully funding our schools and our teachers. They haven't been fully funded in over a decade, because of bad legislation and just refusal to pass legislation to fully fund our schools across the board. Also, teacher pay is an issue. If we want to, and I know one of the topics that we're going to get to also is teacher retention, but I'll go ahead and segue into that a little bit now, because I know that's a big issue, and that varies a lot by zip code, both funding for the schools themselves and for teacher pay. Teachers are highly educated and they take out a lot of student loans, most of them, to get where they are. I also have advanced degrees, a doctorate, and I had to go into debt to achieve that. And I know a lot of teachers have advanced degrees as well. And a starting salary of $35,000 a year is not going to cut it in terms of trying to pay down those loans. So if you really want to attract people to the field, you need to pay them more, and especially if you want them to go to those communities that don't have as good funding. Like, who's going to want to teach there if they have a lot of debt? So that's an issue with both attracting and retaining teachers.
Is there anything else that you would see? Obviously, teacher pay is right up there at the top when it comes to retention and recruitment. Any other things that you feel are levers the state could push for to better retain and recruit talent to the teaching profession?
Oh, absolutely. So my opponent is Ray Felder. She's the chair of the House K to 12 Education Subcommittee. And last year, she actually voted against reducing class sizes and against giving teachers a 30-minute break in the day to do things like eat lunch, go to the bathroom, stuff like that, your basic biological needs. And she voted against that. And that's another thing that, teachers aren't really going to be big fans of. And reducing class sizes. It makes, if you have a large class, it makes a harder experience for the teacher, more difficult in terms of having to attend to all those students and grading more papers. My friend who's a teacher right now is teaching virtually, and she's the only virtual teacher in her school. And she has like 30 kids in her class. And, the in-person teachers don't have as much, because they're trying to keep distance between kids. But she still, even though she's not in person with those kids, she still has to do all that grading and talking to all the parents. And, it's a quick way to get burned out, I think. And I know that's just the solution that has to happen this year because of COVID. But in general, large class sizes are not good for students and not good for teachers, not good for keeping our teachers. And also with regard to 30-minute break in the day, obviously, like that just seems like a no-brainer to me. If you want people to remain teachers, then you let them eat lunch and go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I
treat them like professionals.
You won't find a whole lot of teachers that will disagree with you on that. And you're right about the elementary teachers in particular having such a hard time with that. Yeah. These issues of class size and unencumbered time during the day have been discussed in the General Assembly, as you pointed out, under this umbrella of educational reform, because Speaker Lucas for the last 2 years has really pushed for what he calls reform of the K through 12 system in South Carolina. And that's encompassed a giant umbrella of terms from class size to assessments and everything in between. So you've talked about the importance of unencumbered time and reduced class sizes. What else would be a priority for you as a legislator when it comes to the idea of reforming our education system?
I think a lot of it has to do with testing, standardized testing. I know that's a big topic among teachers too. There's some pros and cons, and again, I'm mostly going by what my teacher friends have told me because I'm asking for a lot of feedback, and not having experience myself, I really want to make sure that I'm getting, their opinion and their take on things. That's something that I'm committed to doing as, if I am elected. I want to listen to educators and get their inputs on things to really make sure that we're solving the problems and that we're addressing their needs, because they're the experts in their field. I'm not, they are. So I've just had mixed opinions on testing. Most people say that, that we're over testing, doing too much of it, and it's not allowing teachers the freedom that they want to teach the way that they want and to do what works for them. And, every student's different, it makes it harder to personalize it to the student. But there's some positives I know as well, like being able to track a student's progress over time in a standardized way. So in terms of specific reforms, I do think it sounds like we need to do something about changing testing in some way that maybe gives teachers a little bit more freedom to do what works best for them in their own classroom and for their own students. What specifically that is, I think is going to take a lot more discussion and a lot more, talking to the experts, the teachers like you, to figure out exactly what that is, because I'm sure there's a million different ideas and possible solutions to that.
Sure, but the idea of listening to teachers isn't always at the top of the list, so that's definitely something that I think our members will appreciate. Another area of education policy that I want to make sure to get your opinion on is school vouchers. Governor McMaster over the summer tried to divert $32 million in federal COVID relief dollars to create SAFE grants, which were private school scholarships for about 5,000 students. The state Supreme Court last week struck that down.
I saw that.
But the governor has said that he hopes in the coming session that the General Assembly will pass some version of a voucher school choice program. Not 100% sure what that looks like in light of last week's ruling, but it's still a legislative priority for him. So if he comes before the General Assembly next year and asks for the General Assembly to pass some form of a voucher program, as a member, what would your position be?
I'm against vouchers. I've always been against that. The whole school choice thing, sounds nice, but in practice, I don't think it really works. And I think it's being shown in states like Michigan, it doesn't really work. You end up with even more problems and inequality and inequity, depending on location. And depending on, like, some students don't have a choice. Some students are just going to go to whatever school they can get a bus ride to. So they're going to end up in schools that don't really benefit them as much anyway, or like those, the schools that might not be, the ones that other people are picking. And I just think that it's a recipe for disaster. And I think the evidence shows that it doesn't work.
Sure. Yeah, the Michigan example is especially interesting since that's the home state of our current Secretary of Education.
Correct. And she was the one who kind of came up with the whole plan of it, and it's not doing so hot.
No, it is not. So we've covered a lot of ground on education policy, but I want to make sure that our members hear from you and the things that you absolutely want to make sure they know before they go to the ballot box. So what have we not covered that you would want to make sure that our members know about you?
Well, again, I'm new to politics. This is my first kind of foray into it. But I'm very passionate about it. I'm passionate about our state. And public education is the main part of my platform. If you go on my website and my Facebook page, that's one of the main things that I'm focusing on, because I can see just how unequal and how bad we are in terms of equity across the state. And again, I'm in a great school district. I know that there's potential for that to be the case across the state. And I want to look out for teachers. I don't think my opponent has really done that, despite the fact that she has more experience than I do, despite the fact that she is the chair of the K-12 Education Committee. She's not really taken the initiative to do the things that she needs to do in the area that she's most responsible for, which is public education. And if you look at her record, she hasn't really done much of anything in the time that she's been in office. But especially in this area that she needs to be showing up for teachers, she's not. And I think we can do better. I think our teachers and our students deserve better. And I'm committed to, like I said, I'm committed to listening to teachers and to educators and making the best decisions based on that. And I don't think that a lot of people in our state legislature, especially my opponent, are doing that. And that's what I want to change if I get there.
Well, we appreciate your willingness to serve our state in this way and to venture into politics. That is a good step. But thank you for your willingness to serve. And if there's anything we can do to help you out, please don't hesitate to let us know.
Great. Well, I appreciate the chance to get to talk to your group and to get to share my views and let everyone know who I am and what I'm all about. So my website is www.monica4sc.com, the number 4. And I'm running for State House and District 26, which is Fort Mill and a little sliver of Rock Hill as well, but mostly Fort Mill.
Perfect. And we'll make sure that website is in the communications we send out to members as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Bye.
Bye.